Yeah, I'm Bob. I'm a compulsive overeater from St. Louis, Missouri. Uh, just some basic facts. Uh, I just observed on August 29th this year, 27 years of consecutive abstinence, including weekends and holidays. Uh, I came into OA a little before that. I'm a slow learner. Uh, I'm not, I don't think learning's the issue. I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight to keep it my way. Uh, and I'm going to politely listen, but then I'll go my own direction. And what that got me before I got to OA was very fat and very miserable. Uh, it's 100 pounds more than I am today. No health consequences yet. I was indestructible. At that age, most of uh, friends and coworkers were equally indestructible. Uh, I don't have to go into all the gory details what happens, particularly to my half the species, mortality rates, what the disease looks like in its end stages. I'm seeing that now at the age of 74, uh, losing relatives and that. But what brought me to Overeaters Anonymous and not years of intense therapy or, you know, what else, other 12-step fellowships that I qualified for was the date that I reached the point of probably deepest despair was at that moment I had tried to start another diet and it wasn't, I failed. There was no one on the outside telling me I had to diet, had to lose weight. Men in blue collar workplaces don't generally talk to other men about that. Uh, they, uh, I called out a friend, uh, and why did I call another man, particularly in my for my workplace? And that was because I didn't couldn't articulate it to myself, but he is putting out that vibe, that recovery vibe. He'd been sober in AA for 10 years and he was on a different footing. And that's why I reached out to him. Uh, I came here the first day. I, I'm pretty sure the lady that was chairing the meeting, there was only four ladies there. They were all the healthy body weight. I didn't know anything about anorexia and bulimia, which I believe two of them suffered from, but this lady started to explain the tools of recovery to me, including weighing and measuring the food plan. And my uh, perceptive mind went into fast overdrive. Why tell myself why I couldn't do any of this stuff? And I had to make excuses. It seemed like she was challenging me. And somehow I came back. And I'm going to fast forward now. I did the usual. As a newcomer, I learned how to read all the readings, put the proper voice inflection into the how it works, our invitation to you. I could chant the chants. I learned prayers by heart real quick, and I couldn't stay away from the food. My weight started on a yo-yo, and I got to another point of absolute misery, this time in the rooms. Probably not to the point of suicidal ideations, but uh, I wasn't in a good space. And back in those days, we would circulate something called a weak care list. And there was two things, you put your name on it, and there was two columns you could check. Are you available to sponsor? Do you need a sponsor? And I was too much of a fraud, I knew, to offer myself as a sponsor, and I was too unwilling to let go. And finally, about that point in 1998, I started checking, I need a sponsor. Now, I'd look around the room to make sure no one was looking at me because you were all looking to see what I was checking on that list. And um, that I did that for about 2 weeks. I walked into a meeting I didn't normally go to. It was another one of those God moments. Why I went to that meeting to this day, I have no idea. There was a man at that meeting, the very first male I'd ever run into in a way. And not that it's required that you have male sponsors. That's an old old husband's tale. And someone in Alcoholics Anonymous started circulating. But there was a man there. He first man I'd ever actually seen at an OA meeting. And after the meeting, we made idle chit chat. He walked up to me and said, "Bob," after we about 30 seconds, he said, "Bob, do you need a sponsor?" And caught me off guard, and all I could say is yes, because I figured he'd seen that on the list. But in fact, he had been told by his sponsor as soon as he got to Albany, where I was living at the time, if he didn't get people to sponsor quickly, he was going to eat again. And he had that point of desperation to keep this. He'd been abstinent about 6 months. And he did what I'm so grateful for. He was not a very, I won't say he wasn't mean, but he wasn't a very warm, effusive, pat yourself, pat me on the back sort of a person. Uh, and maybe after 6 months of doing this, maybe there was still a little bit of white knuckle in it. I never actually worked beyond step one with him. Uh, uh, that helped me get over attitudes about 3 or 4 years later. But he said, "Let's go sit down somewhere." And what he did that day, he essentially he wrote out how he works the tools of recovery, starting right with the food plan. Uh, I every now and then had to interject because I had a ton load of nutritional knowledge. Not that I could apply any, but he may have been one of those people, I'm not sure, at some point said, "So how's this been working for you, Bob?" Uh, Either way, that was, I finally learned that I quieted. I chimed down a little bit. And he gave me the food plan. We agreed upon a time I was going to call him in the morning. He showed me how to work the other tools uh, to get the food. We started immediately. I've often said, "Well, I got all this food in the house." Luckily for me, I did not have a lot of food in the house. I did my shopping at drive-throughs mostly, and convenience stores, and so there wasn't a lot to get rid of. But in the world of when do I start this? Now. All right, it was lunch was done. I went to had to go supply up, uh, and people. Uh, I think back now when people say, "Well, I don't want to waste all this food." Well, when the food goes into me, that's not necessary. It's a total waste of good food, or bad food, whatever it is. And he, I started calling him. I got to about 3 days into this, and I started to get sloppy with my calls. And God, I had an on-call 24-hour job, and right around that time, God gave me better hours. I don't want to say that the Penn Central Railroad or Conrail was God, but that was God acted through them. He gave me better hours, so there was no reason I couldn't call him at 6:15 every morning. I was there. I was available. And after three random misses, he told me I was very rude, and I had no comeback. I started setting an alarm clock, which when you're an example of self-will run riot, uh, alarm clocks were not part of my standard equipment there. I got up when I damn well pleased, and that was it. And well, guess what happened during the course of that period? Uh, I got to a healthy body weight. And why did I leave? I succeeded in other diets and quit. And of course, went right back to the food. I think I kind of had a memory of that still. But I was starting to pick up something. Again, I could not, at that moment, I could not in my head articulate that to myself. But there was something about the energy, the vibes coming out of those rooms that kept me coming. Uh, just a friend that's walk in and It's like when Norm used to walk into Cheers and everyone would say, Norm, and it was kind of like that. I did that for another about 3 years. I wrote on the fellowship. I essentially practiced step one. I got to another point because I start to hear and feel how people are getting that vibe, and they're getting that vibe through working the 12 steps into their lives. And I wanted that. And guess what? After this is darn near 7 years in the rooms, uh, three 3 years, 3.5 years abstinent. I do the math. Why am I still fighting? And now it wasn't anymore just my desire to keep control. It was fear. It was fear of the unknown, venturing off into this vast sea of recovery. Even though I felt, I wanted what they had. Finally, I walked up to a man. This was in my other fellowship, which I subsequently recognized that I qualified for Alcoholics Anonymous. Actually, that lady at the very first meeting told me I could go to open AA meetings. That was one of my excuses. There were enough meetings. And I walked up to a man there, shaking like a leaf. I had the book in my hand. Uh, this is the book. And I asked him to help me. I ended up with a sponsor that night. It wasn't that person. Funny part of it was after I had spent months interviewing sponsors in my head and picking the right person, within about 5 seconds, he pointed me to someone else, one of his sponsees. So again, I was very blessed. My sponsees have always been younger than me. And that helped get my head, my ego in right shape, because I could sit down. And what he did, this was particularly the way I was taken through the steps. I'm not going to say this is the only way. There's a lot of different venues, a lot of different types of meetings, because I was still fighting this whole idea of unmanageability in my life. I hadn't been fired. I hadn't, my compulsive eating hadn't led me to jail. 10 divorces, or I think you need a marriage first to get a divorce. But, I hadn't had all of the typical stuff that we hear. So he decided to start at the front of the book, and he read this to me. We sat down at his place once a week. And today, all right, I sponsor people all over the planet. We have a technology. I have a personal Zoom account. We can meet on Zoom and that. But we went to his place. He threw me a highlighter, and again, he didn't do it like a college professor. He shared how this stuff meant to him, and stuff that I had read innumerable times took on different meanings. It jumped off the page. It's the old joke you hear, like, when did they insert that? Of course, this book hasn't been changed since 1939 for its 164 pages, but it started to sink in. We got to stuff where there was work to be done, like in step 4. He showed me a very specific way he did step 4. I did a 4th step with him. That started this journey. And the steps are not a past tense thing. There's ongoing work. Step 6 and 7 are basically my daily work, how to not behave like an absolute fool. 8, 10, and 11 keep me in contact with God, acknowledge what I've done, keep me in contact. And of course, step 12, I got to share this thing. And when I do make a mess, guess what? I've got the tools that were shown to me in steps 4, 5, 8, and 9. And there's very specific ways. I make a 10-step list, which tells me I probably need to revisit 4, 5, 8, and 9. I don't always cause damage these days. I probably do more damage to myself sometimes. That's my journey, and I could not do this without particularly a sponsor, but without a whole plethora of people in these rooms that share. So that's all I have, and I will pass. Thank you.